they make style differences and flowery designs, whatever things, to feminize it. But the feminization of the pants doesn't subtract from the pants the masculine power move that they still imply. Matter of fact, it's so much accepted by the society that it's kind of hardly recognizable. Now, Diane Crane, in her book Fashion and Its Social Agendas, published by the University of Chicago Press in 2000, said this about the trajectory of women's clothing between the 19th century and the 21st century. Had a 19th century social scientist set out to predict how women would dress at the beginning of the 21st century, it would have only been by considering the clothing of the most marginal women in Europe and America that an accurate assessment would have been obtained. In other words, less than 0.1% of all women in the West wore pants of any kind for any reason at the end of the 19th century. At the beginning of the 20th century, 99% of all women in the West wear pants. Okay? So, if this is where we are today, what does that trend perhaps suggest about the future? That rather than simply women embracing all of men's clothing, we're going to have a reciprocal response, and men then become free to embrace all forms of women's clothing. So here is streetstyle.com from August of 2010. I could have pulled pictures out of the summer of 2011, but we've got a guy on the left in a miniskirt, a guy in the middle in a skirted pair of pants, kind of roughly, and a guy on the right in a rather close-fitting knee-length skirt. Here's some kind of I don't know whether this is a fashion show. It kind of looks like it is. Boots, and the skirt. This guy's in some kind of sports context for this impression that he's making with his miniskirt. What's the question, Ben? Yeah. And this guy, I can't tell whether that's a pair of super loose shorts or a skirt. But it was headed Skirts for Men. Okay, if you Google Skirts for Men, you'll find websites that are designed to provide men the whole range of skirt options for men. And these are not. This is not a gay move. Okay. Now, some of you are inclined to be incredulous. So, what a joke. But to be honest, 70 years ago, people sitting in this institution would have been incredulous if I had shown them pictures of women wearing pants that's commonplace today. They would say, oh, that'll never happen. So there's no reason that this couldn't become normative as well. So then, how do we, get to Joel's question, evaluate whether we guys should put skirts on?
I disagree with that in the fact that it's a disadvantage to wear a skirt. It's an advantage to wear pants.
From what standpoint is it advantageous?
What do you mean?
Well, you said it's an advantage to wear pants. What's the advantage?
Well, if you're going to be modest and do...
Modesty is not an issue.
Well, it is an issue because we're talking about we're coming from a Christian point. The only reason it is an issue is because we're coming from a biblical standpoint, and modesty is a biblical standpoint, so it is an issue.
So tell me again what you're disagreeing with.
Not most people are going to be wearing skirts because it's a disadvantage.
Okay, so...
normal activities.
Yes, but you made a claim. Okay, there you go. You're talking about normal activities. So,
Yeah.
in other words, the reason why the world won't adopt skirts for men is because it's a disadvantage. Okay, well, I've got two reasons why that's not a good argument. Number one, men wear shorts to do all kinds of work that exposes their legs to scratch, harm. Okay, so if the issue is protection, then there's really going to be little advantage to a pair of shorts versus a skirt. Okay. Secondly, the men who are advocating men wearing skirts are saying that it's advantageous. I mean, this is, you go out and read their literature, they're going to argue that you're freer, it's cooler, and, the same kind of things that would be said about shorts. Now, the one thing that makes me think that maybe it won't happen is that there's something in fallen masculine psyche that's often called machoism. And the machoistic element of society is going to resist any kind of feminizing of them. On the other hand, the machoistic men haven't resisted their women putting on skin-tight pants, transgressing right into their territory, becoming equal with them on that side. So I'm not sure that the opposite direction is impossible. Yes?
But is it as much anymore? Like, I understand during earlier times when pants were coming into the South for women that there was a huge feministic, women should be equal with men, they should be able to do the same jobs, they should be able to vote, all that different stuff. But from what I see now in today's culture, it's not that women are trying to be like men as much as it is just...
No, they're not trying to be like men. They've already achieved that equality. They've already achieved the removal of the distinction, and because society has accepted it. There's no, it'd be like saying, having a girl get up in speech class here and do a stump speech for women's rights to vote. If she'd be laughed at, what's the point? You've got the right. There's no need to even think about or bother advocating for it. So the point then is not whether society continues to perceive or advocate for women wearing pants on this grounds, but how did we get here? What was the philosophical reason for arriving here? And how can we know when a replacement's taken place? So I want to answer Joel's question of, let's say that in 50 years, probably I won't be around in 50 years, but your kids will be, that a significant portion of the masculine population in the United States is wearing skirts. Okay, this becomes culturally accepted. All right. We're going to apply the same set of principles. Where did it come from? What's the philosophical push behind it? Is it retaining the value of gender distinctness? Does America now have men's skirts and women's skirts so that if a man is seen wearing something that's close to what women wear, he is viewed as socially unacceptable? In other words, the society has the value. And if a woman is seen wearing something that's close to or like the kind of skirts that men wear, she's viewed as socially unacceptable. In that case, if that were the case, we could argue that our society's created a new distinction. And it retains the value and has replaced the old style. But if we've got what I was illustrating here with this circle right here, where, and to be honest, if you read kind of like stylish stuff that's going on today, New York, Chicago, I recently read an article in which a young man was interviewed, And he said, you know, when I feel like being feminine, I put on my mom's pants and my mom's sweater. And when I feel like being masculine, I've got a different wardrobe. So what the Docker ad, maybe this is a word that most of you don't know, called androgyny, is really kind of the new leading edge. It's not so much the feminization of men and the masculinization of women as it is bisexuality. You can just be whichever gender side you prefer. And in that way, you've got the whole range of wardrobe options. You feel like a skirt today? No problem. You feel like a pair of jeans tomorrow? No problem. You feel like something that kind of makes it difficult to distinguish your gender, you know, kind of cuts the middle line? No problem. That seems to be the trajectory that society is going. Now, it's always easy when you're on the back side of a trend to say how you got to where you are. It's much more difficult when you're on the front side of the trend to say where it's going. Okay? I can tell by the body language of a good number of you that you think you're very skeptical about current trends going in a direction of either bisexuality or men wearing skirts. But that's only because we're at this particular point in history. People 70 years ago would have been equally skeptical about our society going to where it's at now. Okay? Yes.
Actually, there's a group of guys in my town that wear kilts all the time because it's Scottish heritage.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, the opening line of a 2011 GQ article on this was, hey, guys, skirts aren't for Scots anymore. This is not about ethnic heritage. This is now for everybody. So I think the Scottish kilt thing is kind of, it's always been distinct, you know, and it's just really not even what's going on. All right, so if a culture is deliberately moving in a direction that violates biblical standards, then Ephesians 5:11 says, do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even reprove them. If a culture, on the other hand, is moving toward biblical norms or incorporating biblical norms, then that cultural shift should be supported. To be faithful to Scripture, however we do it, we must maintain gender distinctions in our clothing. There is no biblical basis for saying that the distinctions may be removed or ignored in certain activities. Okay, so that's the bottom line answer I give to all of the what about this activity, what about that activity, what about the other activity. There's no biblical basis to say that a given activity allows you to remove gender distinctions in clothing. So the history, moral direction, and associational patterns of a cultural practice must be analyzed before we can properly apply any Old Testament law. Because Western culture continues to identify pants as the gender-defining clothing of men and dresses or skirts as the gender-defining clothing of women, we cannot pronounce the issue passé. To be honest, I'm ready to pronounce it passé. I'd like to just say, end of discussion, it's over. But I don't think I can do that and be honest with how society continues to perceive what is being done and the direction society is going. Now, people are bound to disagree with the interpretation that I'm offering, and there's three ways that they could disagree. They could disagree, well, two ways. They could disagree with my application. They say, I agree with you, Dr. Phil, that clothing should be gender distinct. I just disagree that the way you think it is should be maintained is the right way. I think that as long as my wife or daughters wear X style of pants, that style of pants will mark them as distinctively feminine, and we